Hi folks, welcome back to another F2 and F3 recap. This time we're going over the Monaco race weekend. A small piece of series news to update you on before we start is that we have new logos for both F3 and F2. Anyway, we're starting with F3, but the faithless among you can skip to F2 using the timestamps. Just know that you're depriving yourself of great racing and brilliant entertainment. First up was our practice session. Within a few minutes we had a rough hit into the barrier for James Wharton. The last time we saw Wharton on track, he'd had another terrible crash into a wall at Melbourne. He was seen hobbling away from the car, so hopefully he was just sore and not nursing a new injury. So far, not a very comfortable start to the season for the Year 2 driver. There was an extended time spent under red flag conditions while the marshals got to work repairing the barrier as the clock continued to count down. Fortunately, the session time was extended by 15 minutes, and we get a green flag with 28 minutes to go, so the drivers had time to get more comfortable with some push laps. 10 minutes later, Mattia Colnaghi had to abort a push lap as he caught up to traffic. With 14 minutes to go, Pedro Claro just about brushes the wall at turn 12. At the 11-minute mark, Brando Badaware sweeps past Anthony Nogues just shy of the barrier. A few laps later, Fionn McLaughlin hits rush hour traffic in the middle of a push lap. At the same time, we get a yellow flag waved at turn 1 as Garfias and Yamakoshi end up in the runoff. At some point, Gerard Giu just about loses the car at turn 15, and with 6 minutes to go, Marcia Guadish almost slides into the wall at turn 12 before getting stuck in traffic. Kanato Lee skates into the turn 1 runoff, and with 2 minutes to go, Mattia Colnaghi is in the same place. Nicola Lacorte clips the wall at turn 12, but makes it to the pits without any yellow flags called. Ugo damages his left front suspension as he slides on track and gets some air over a curb. Campos are looking the fastest, with Niall taking the fastest times in sectors 1 and 2, and Ugo Chuku in sector 3. Our only notable infringement is Fionn McLaughlin, who was caught speeding in the pit lane. He was over the limit by 1.4 kilometres an hour. No major penalties, just a €200 fine. Our qualifying around this short and narrow track is split into two groups of 15 cars. Each group has 15 minutes on the clock. The even-numbered cars have been drawn to go out in our first group. The qualifying order will be based on which group has the driver with the fastest lap. The rest of their group will line up behind them on the same column of the grid. Starting with Group A, Tuukka Tappinen was investigated for an unsafe release, but upon review it was deemed a no further action, as the cars were released simultaneously and there were circumstances that prevented Tappinen from seeing Stromsted's car as he entered the fast lane of the pits. With over 8 minutes to go, Noah Stromsted gets a little loose around the swimming pool up to Rascasse. Stromsted is also penalised for impeding Tappinen at turn 4. He's handed a 3-place grid penalty to both the sprint and feature races for the weekend. McLaughlin nudges the exit wall at the lower Mirabeau and damages his front wing with less than 2 minutes left on the clock. Ugo Chuku just touches the barrier at Rascasse, brushing his left rear. Bruno Delpino was investigated for leaving the track and gaining a track position advantage over Fernando Barrichello at the Nouvelle chicane, but was able to prove that he attempted to return the place to Barrichello at the swimming pool, so no further action was required. Brando Badaware nabs an amazing pole lap, taking overall best on every sector for Group A. Now Group B is out to try and beat Badaware to pole. This time the odd-numbered cars are up. Trident released Freddie Slater from the pits in clear air while the rest of the pack are at the opposite side of the track going through the tunnel. With 5 minutes to go, Marcia Guadish taps the barrier as he exits the swimming pool. We get a replay of Jin Nakamura losing his rear in the same place. As though his barrier tap wasn't enough, Guadish also has a bit of a spook at Casino. Slater nudges the wall on the exit of the lower Mirabeau, loses a front wing end plate and abandons his lap. Niall brushes the turn 19 barrier but still manages to beat Badaware's Group A time by 2/10 with 2 minutes left on the clock. Considering their pace at Melbourne, the ARTs were not firing on all cylinders today. Next up is our sprint race. On lap 1 we have a handful of drivers skipping past turn 1 who have been penalised for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. 10-second penalties are handed to Matteo De Paulo, Enzo Dellini and Nicola Lacorte. On lap 1, and not unexpectedly, we have an absolute mess at the Hotel Hairpin as Tappinen hits Rivera at the apex, fine if not for the other 22 cars bearing down on them. There's lots of minor damage, largely front wing end plates go flying for the front and mid-pack. At the back, Brad Benavides gets sandwiched between Nandavid Biramakti and Christian Ho as they all have to check up coming down towards the hairpin. Benavides gets launched into the air, comes down and scrapes along the outside wall, and then Christian Ho slams to a stop into the back of his car. The only other stoppages are Badaware in the wall at the lower Mirabeau with no front wing. Tappinen slowed to a stop in the tunnel, also with a damaged front wing. The safety car is deployed, and Taito Kato and James Warden take the chance to pit. Soon after, we go into an extensive red flag period for the medical team to attend to Benavides, who sustained some serious injuries from the incident. A terrible outcome for him, and just as we're on the precipice of getting into the bulk of the F3 season. I don't know when or if he'll be back in the seat with AIX for the rest of the season. I can only hope he has a speedy recovery. A slew of drivers get penalised for resumption infringements where team members were all touching cars in the fast lane of the pits within 15 seconds of the race restart. These were all reviewed after the race's 30-second penalties. They would have been stop-go penalties had the investigation been completed during the race. Our affected drivers are Louis Sharp, Yevan David, Michael Shin, Fernando Barrichello and Enzo Delaney. When we get back to green flag conditions, we've swapped to time left plus 1 lap with 21 minutes left on the clock. Rodin have Pedro Claro cede a position to Bruno Delpino as he skipped the Nouvelle chicane. Nakamura goes aggressive and tries a bold pass on Niall at the hairpin, but Niall holds. With 18 minutes left to go, we get a yellow flag at the hairpin again. This time Slater tried to move on Rivera, instead barging into his side pod. Niall, following behind the pair, gets collected in the mess. They all get restarted again and join the rear of the field. Slater cops a 10-second penalty for the collision. At the 8-minute mark, we get a quick yellow to green flag, presumably for someone getting caught but righting themselves. There's no follow-up for this. With 7 minutes to go, a VSC is called for the marshals to collect debris from Slater's front wing. He was wearing the damage from the earlier collision and a piece of wing separated as he bounced over a curb at the swimming pool. At the 6-minute mark, Rivera pits to retire the car. Despite the slightly reduced running, we get a full point allocation for the race. First over the line was Hiyu Yamakoshi, then Gerard G and Bruno Delpino. Fastest lap was Ugo Ugachuku. Poor Hiyu Yamakoshi had his win taken away from him as it was discovered that some parts had been installed on the wrong sides of his car. Pretty rough. This promotes G to first, Delpino to second, and Pedro Claro to third. On to our feature race. Before we get started, Michael Shin earns a stop-go penalty for being out of order at the first safety car line on the formation lap. Butterware gets a good start and rockets ahead of Niall for the lead. Two of the Dam's cars, Lacorte and Biramacti, get a little too close, but manage to both drive away without losing track position. Kanato Lee goes bouncing over the turn 1 curb behind them. By the time we get to the hairpin, Garfias is already up 5 places, presumably from having a brilliant start. Unfortunately, as he's not in the front of the field, we never get his passes on the broadcast. Tappanen and Guadish clash at turn 18, a bad weekend of DNFs for Tappanen, who I think we all expected to be dicing at the front of the pack. Hopefully this is an anomaly and he'll make a big run of it over the rest of the season. The safety car is called and Guadish pits for a new front wing. Nakamura also pits, so perhaps he also got tangled in some lap 1 antics somewhere not shown on the broadcast. Not sure what needs to be replaced for him. We're back to green on lap 5. Slater starts getting feisty with Niall, who is likely having flashbacks to getting collected at the hairpin due to a failed move by Slater the day earlier. We get a replay of Delaney just tapping the wall at the swimming pool with his right rear. On lap 8, Shin comes in to serve his stop-go penalty, and for some salt in the wound, he also gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Laps 15 and 16, we get into a pitched battle between Ho, Lee, and David. I would have loved to see more of this happening as it went on for several laps, but the spicy replays were helping to tell the story. DePaulo gets a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage over Barrichello on the Nouvelle chicane. It may have been on lap 8, I'm not 100% sure. On lap 19, Barrichello pits to retire the car with suspension damage following the hit of the wall at turn 12. Shortly afterwards, Delaney is attacking Biram Hakti and doesn't let up for several laps, nabbing the spot somewhere around the casino on lap 26. There's some mess that goes on at the hairpin, and David drives his car underneath Biram Hakti at the lower Mirabeau. David gets a 10-second penalty for the collision, which is disappointing as he'd been having a powerful charge through the pack up to that point. Moments before this happened, Lacorte dropped down the timing tower and retires from the race, but we never get an overview of the incident. We finish the race with Butterware in first, Niall in second, and Slater in third. Fastest lap point goes to Slater. I really felt for Niall on that one, but after the nightmare Butterware had with Prima last year, he probably needed this more. I'm sure there'll be plenty of other opportunities for Niall to claim his first F3 win. So we had 195 F3 passes for just this weekend, and that's only based on finishing results, not the back and forth that goes on throughout the race. These are just the top 5. You can't pass at Monaco, they say. Tell that to Jose Garfias, Mattia Kolnagi and Fia McLaughlin, who each ascended over 20 places up the pack. Not far behind were Kanato Lee and James Wharton. For our championship standings, Ugo Ugachuku still sits in the lead, with Bruno Delpino still in second, claiming some more points this weekend. Freddie Slater is our third place. Brando Badaway has leaped up the order with his feature race win. There are a few notable names still not on the board with a point yet, but as was seen with Badaway, it only takes one win to bring your point total up by a significant margin. Alright, on to F2. No F2 specific news or updates, so we'll get straight into the on-track sessions. Our tyre compounds for the weekend are the softs and the super softs. Starting as always with practice. It was a little slow going initially, but with 35 minutes to go, Ollie Goethe parks up at the swimming pool as his car dies, giving us a nice early technical retirement for the weekend. We get a red flag, but go back to green quickly with the steward's collection of Goethe's car very speedy. Dino Boganovic loses the rear of the car and then gets stuck in traffic. Kush Miney and Kian Shields just about collide at turn 3. Shields gets a warning for erratic driving, but no penalties are issued. Joshua Dirksen slides around and gets some air over the curb at the swimming pool. Another red flag is called with 18 minutes left on the clock. Rafa Villagomez hit the outside wall of turn 3, scraped his way along the wall before locking up and bouncing into the left wall near the outside of turn 4. We get some replays of Solov brushing a wall and some lockups from Lawrence Van Hoopen, Dino Boganovic and Villagomez. Perhaps the flat spot contributed to Villagomez's crash. Taz and Trbojevic and Sebastian Montoya get very close and Montoya loses a front wing end plate. With 3.5 minutes left, we get a yellow flag for Dirksen, who had a lock-up and parked himself in the turn 1 runoff. Alex Dunn also gets some air of the swimming pool exit curb. After the session, Marty Boyer and Martinius Stenchon just about come to blows when picking grid boxes to perform practice starts. Boyer changes the side of the grid he was angling for, and awkwardly claims the box Stenchon was driving into, but doesn't park in the box correctly. Boyer gets a warning from the stewards for not following the practice start requirements. Next up is qualifying. Similar to the F3 quali, our field is split into 2 groups of 11 cars. Each group has 60 minutes to get their best time. The odd-numbered cars have been drawn to go first. Also like F3, the qualifying order is not based on individual performance, instead on which group has the driver with the best overall lap. The rest of the fastest drivers group will line up behind them on the same column of the grid, either from pole or from second. We'll start with Group A. With 9 minutes to go, Kamara hits the wall at turn 19, damaging his left rear suspension. I guess he had to even it out after doing the same thing to the right rear suspension in Montreal. He's really making Invicta put in some work with these wildly high-pressure repairs during qualifying. Noel Leon finds his way into the runoff, and Rotoma Miata just manages to keep the car straight coming out of the tunnel. Noel Leon's push lap is interrupted by Intrapuvizek at the swimming pool, and Montoya locks up at the top Mirabeau and dives into the runoff. Intrapuvizek hits the barrier at turn 18, losing a front wing end plate. He dives straight into the pits following. Dunn brushes the wall at turn 18, and with 4 minutes to go, John Bennett locks up and takes a hard hit into the barrier at turn 1. The red flag is a blessing for the Invicta team working on Kamara's car in the pit lane. Being prime cause of the red flag, Bennett loses his best time. When the green flag is waved, we have just enough time to get 1 prep lap and maybe 2 push laps in a row. Leon bumps around exiting the swimming pool and hits the wall pretty hard, but manages to beat the time set before the red flag was called. Kamara also kisses the barrier at turn 19, but sets the best time of the session. Dunn replicates the barrier hit Kamara made, but finishes 1/10 behind his time. Now it's time for the even-numbered drivers to go out and try and beat their teammates' times. Miney confirmed the second bad weekend in a row for Trident by punching into Bennett at the Nouvelle Chicane in an attempt to get a better track position. It was pretty senseless. He copped a 3-place grid penalty for both the sprint and the feature races. Bennett started to drive away, but instead managed to wedge his car on the curb and wasn't able to right himself to drive away. He was out of the session before it even started. Miney more successfully does the same thing on Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. as they go green, which was poorly received by Fittipaldi. I mean, just have your team release you in clean air rather than screwing over everyone else with these dodgy track position demands. Dirksen is penalised for impeding Miney at the hairpin and also gets a 3-place grid drop for both the sprint and the feature races. He then locks up at turn 1, but not enough that he abandons the lap. Goethe just about loses the car at the swimming pool entry, but pulls it together. Nikola Solov sets a lap 1,000th of a second behind Miney, but manages to finish off the session just 1/10 behind Kamara's time from Group A. Next up is the sprint race. Colton Herter gets a bad start off the line. Van Hoopen skipped over turn 1 and gets a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage over Fittipaldi and Villagomez. Goethe and Miata get incredibly close at the hairpin, but both maintain the positions and continue. Montoya also tries to take the long way around the hairpin, but can't lock in a better position. The next lap, Goethe gets into an undetermined issue, presumably around the hairpin again, and drops to the rear of the field. He's really been having a rough run this season. While I wouldn't have put money on Goethe as a title contender, he's definitely been robbed of several chances for good points. He heads into the pits. On lap 7, Boyer tries to gain a place down the inside of the hotel hairpin, but doesn't manage to pull it off. Van Hoopen gets passed by Boyer on the next lap. By lap 15, Miata is right on the tail of Intrapuvizak, and we have a very close run DRS train from P11 onwards. The front 10 drivers have spread themselves out, knowing that if they're not able to pass and climb better positions on track, their only other hopes for another point is to get the fastest lap. We get a quick yellow to green flag on lap 18 for an otherwise unidentified incident. Miata finally gets past Intrapuvizak as they approach turn 12 on lap 22. Goethe retires to the pits. We get a replay of Boyer getting it done around the outside of the hairpin and repassing Van Hoopen. By lap 25, Intrapuvizak's car slows and he pulls over and heads into the pits. A few laps later, Leon begins to lap the rear of the field and Montoya has a big lockup coming out of the tunnel. Intrapuvizak rejoins the pack a few laps down. On the final lap, Boyer continues to fight Montoya, both drivers having had an eventful time, but well and truly out of the points as we've come to expect from Prima. Our finishing order is Leon in first, Belinsky in second, and Mini in third. Solov claims the point for fastest lap. On to our last session of the weekend, the feature race. In addition to his existing 3-place grid penalty from quali, Dirksen is handed a further 5-place grid drop due to using too many sets of tyres for the weekend. He now starts the feature race in 18th place. Our alternative strategy drivers on the Super Softs are Montoya, Villagomez, Fittipaldi, and Van Hoopen. On the formation lap, everyone checks up as they come out of the swimming pool. This catches a cluster of cars out. Montoya slams on his brakes and ends up with Verona just about driving underneath him. As the race starts, Van Hoopen and Fittipaldi make contact at turn 1. Verona is given a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage through turn 1. Boyer tries his same move from the sprint race at the hotel hairpin and gets past Colton Herta, but doesn't make it past Goethe. By lap 7, Villagomez pits for a new front wing following contact at Mirabeau. There's no penalty applied to anyone for this, so the stewards would have deemed it a racing incident. With Monaco being a shorter track, 8 laps is the minimum race distance to cover before they're allowed to take the mandatory pit stop. Montoya and Van Hoopen use the minimum window to pit for their soft tyres. A few laps later, Montoya locks up on his new softs coming out of the tunnel as Villagomez attacks, but cedes position. On lap 11, Fittipaldi also pits for his soft tyres. The last of our alt-strat runners running through the pit lane is Villagomez on lap 15. Nearly 10 laps later, we start getting our soft tyre runners making their pit stops for the super softs. First up are Ollie Goethe and John Bennett. We get a replay of Montoya tapping the wall as he exits the swimming pool. On lap 26, Mini and Shields pit for their super softs. Mini's stop is a little bit slow. Next lap, Belinsky comes in for his super softs too. Montoya takes advantage of the pit exiters around him being on cold tyres and passes Mini at Casino, the following lap passing Belinsky at Mirabeau. Leon and Intrapuvizak make their pit stops. Belinsky and Leon fight for position as they exit the tunnel and approach the Nouvelle chicane. Their battle continues round the circuit and Leon locks up into turn 1. On lap 29, Beganovic pits for his super softs. Then on lap 31, Goethe chases Van Hoopen up to turn 2 and tries but fails a move on the outside of the hairpin. Our next pitters are Solov and Stenchon on lap 32 and Kamara and Dunn on lap 33. Kamara has a close moment with Miata as he exits the pits and struggles on his outlap, not able to get any grip. On lap 35, Solov makes a move to pass Kamara into turn 1 and successfully pulls it off as Kamara locks up into the runoff and retires for the race. A VSC is called to push his car away. No pitting is allowed during VSCs, but Miata makes it into the pit lane just before the call is made. He seems to be having similar struggles with grip as Kamara and loses places to Varone and Beganovic on his outlap. By lap 37, we're back to full race pace again. Boyer and Herta are penalised for VSC infringements, Boyer getting a 5-second penalty for exceeding the minimum delta time and Herta 10 seconds for passing teammate Miata during the VSC. On lap 40, Herta, Varone and Dirksen make the pit stops, followed by Miney and Boyer the next lap. Miney similarly struggles to get the tyre in the right window and gets passed by Beganovic as they both skip the Nouvelle chicane. There are no infringements for this. Our race finishes with Solov in first, Dunn in second and Beganovic in third. Solov also nets another fastest lap point. Now it's time for our movers and breakers. I don't know that we can really count the sprint races on account of the DNF for Ollie Goethe impacting all of these drivers except Kushmini, and Taz and Trapuvizak finishing 3 laps down, impacting most of the drivers here. Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. capitalised hugely on the feature race using the alternative tyre strategy. He pitted on lap 10 and was able to keep the pace up to stay ahead of many of the drivers as they pitted later. Sebastian Montoya and Laurens van Hoopen were also claiming places from the alt-tyre strategy. Miraculously, we only had one little retirement this weekend, and it was for Ollie Goethe all the way at the beginning of practice. I feel bad for the guy. He's been having a bad run of DNFing himself, being DNF'd by others, and being DNF'd by his own car. On to the championship standings. Gabriele Mini has just squeaked ahead of Nicola Sola for the championship lead by 1 point, with Martini Ostension claiming the third spot. Rafa Kamara has dropped off of the top rungs, and Laurens van Hoopen has also had a few bad races one after the other. While that weekend was certainly something, I find Monaco to be a wildly unsuitable track for series that are supposed to be based on driver development, especially when you have so many cars on track for F3. The sprint race feels especially odd, rewarding drivers with decent points gains for qualifying in the mid-pack. I would rather see them race at a track like Zandvoort instead. Anyway, we're on to some much more typical racetracks that our drivers will have more experience running, so you can look forward to some close times and great action over the next few months. I'll be back with you very soon for part 2 of this doubleheader at Barcelona. Please subscribe and I'll see you there.
What's going on, you drama queen?